Hi, welcome to Seymour's World. I'm Seymour Kazimirski on a very, very special day. I know you're all getting ready for the holidays, but today is my 1-year anniversary on Seymour's World. Jay Fidell is going to be my guest today. He was the gentleman who introduced me to the show, got me to host the show, and of course gets me here every Tuesday from 1 to 2 o'clock with many, many guests. Over the last year, we have had 47 guests come on the show. So Jay, I want to say aloha and welcome and congratulations for getting me on this show and making me a host. I thank you for it. I have actually enjoyed it. It's been a wonderful time.
I'm delighted to hear that. But your analysis reminds me of our program on Thursday, which is ThinkTech United, which is at the Lania Kea at 5 to 7:30 p.m. And we're having a lot of things. One of them is Robbie Yam, formerly Executive Vice President of Hawaiian Electric, will be speaking about leadership and wrapping it around a lot of things that are happening these days. But the other thing is we're giving awards away, and we're giving 3 awards you might be interested in. The first is the number of shows, okay, the host with the number of shows, the greatest number. Second is the host with the greatest number of live guests. And the third is the host with the greatest number of listeners. Okay, and we're going to give really remarkable prizes away for those 3 things. So I'm glad you made the analysis and did a little checking on your own stats, Seymour. We're making the same analysis. Good. And you might even win sometime on Thursday.
This is my first year. I doubt very much if I will win anything, but I have really enjoyed being on the show. But what we're going to talk about today is we are going to talk about 2014. I want to really look at it from a monthly, going back from January right through till now. And I've compiled a list. And because you are an expert, and you have definitive opinions on what's going on, I'm going to give you different subjects for each month that has happened and ask you to talk about one of them. And I want you all to know that Jay has no idea what I have written down. So this is extremely impromptu. And at the same time, I think you will enjoy his comments on the different topics that we have. So here we go, January 2014.
I want to say that as far as Seymour is concerned, it's not impromptu at all.
This is
look at that. Look at the work hours into that thing.
I put a lot of time into this, but
it's not intimidating, I assure you.
I think you'll enjoy it, Jay. January. 4 things happened in January. Number 1, Colorado legalized the purchase of marijuana. Number 2, we had Obamacare, and the Affordable Care Act came into actual action today. On January the 3rd, we have ISIS started a big push, and they controlled Fallujah. And of course, a big issue was the VA scandal on January 30th. So those 4 items were the big news in January. Which of those 4 would you like to talk about?
It's multiple choice.
Of course it is.
I think I'd like to talk about ISIS.
Go ahead.
You and I have talked about ISIS before. You and David Day also have talked about ISIS, and I think it's probably the most profoundly troubling thing that's happened all year. And we didn't know it was happening. We knew that when George Bush went in to a second time in Iraq, we knew that would destabilize things. I mean, I think it was a given to anybody familiar with the region. And indeed, it has destabilized things. And this is just one of those downline effects from what he did. ISIS fills a vacuum. ISIS creates a new wild animal. It's kind of a mutation on violence. And,
where do you think they are today? I know a year has transpired since they first were noticed by the media.
Well, I think the media is what defines ISIS. I mean, ISIS plays to the media. You chop people's heads off because you want outrage, you want shock and awe and all that. So I don't think there have been as many beheadings in the last few weeks, so it slows down. There'll be another beheading coming up soon. It'll speed up. So I think in terms of the shock and awe, and generally disruptive effect. I think they're very disruptive, and they are held in shock and awe.
I think, and I hope you don't mind me contradicting
No,
you.
you will all show.
You know I'm going to do
and I will find a way to agree with you, whatever you say.
I think that the VA scandal for the U.S. was one of the biggest disasters that we have had. I think ISIS is a world problem. It's a problem that the whole world has to face. But the VA scandal really hurt us, to see how we were treating our soldiers coming back from wars, all the way back to World War II and Korean War. All these people trying to get appointments, and the lies that went into it, and believing that we had an administration that was truly taking care of them. I thought that was, to me, the worst thing that could have happened in that month.
Well, there's a common denominator between that and the Obamacare matter. It's, is whether the government is effective.
Correct.
And I think Obamacare, you can say it came into play, but there were a lot of problems. There still are a lot of problems, although you begin reading now headlines that are more positive about Obamacare, and sounds like it's here to stay. The Republicans will never be able to actually repeal it, such as they were talking about. But both of those issues, Obamacare and the VA scandal, reflect a justified lack of confidence in federal government. This is very scary. And there are other, just on the way to this show, I heard that we have another cliff resolution in Congress again. And we have a week or so to pass it. It may or may not pass. And so everybody sits tenterhooks, wondering if the government is going to operate or not. This is not the way it should be. There's a failure of leadership. There's a failure of these congressmen and senators to actually do the job they swore to do. And I think the public is getting the message that we got problems in Washington.
Well, they obviously did with the election, which comes further down in the list, by the way. Let's go to February, because we could spend the whole hour just on January.
Yes, we could.
All right, are you ready? In February, we had the Winter Olympics in Sochi. General Motors recalled 780,000 vehicles because of faulty ignition switches. The beginning of the Ukraine Civil War started in February. Those are the 4 items. What do you want to talk about?
Wait, Sochi, General Motors, Ukraine.
And the Civil War in Syria.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I missed that one.
Well, there was a civil war in Ukraine, too.
Yes. Yeah, but each of those things were monumental, I think, when it comes to world opinion. You'll notice those were all, except for the GM, they're all about world affairs rather than U.S. Which one do you think was the most important?
Oh, I picked 3.
Go for it.
I pick Sochi, Ukraine, and the civil war in Syria, because I think they're all related. They're all part of a larger process. It's interesting that Sochi was all sweet and light. The Olympics, all the coverage about the Olympics, and you would have had the impression from that, that Russia was pretty much okay, and that they were playing ball with the world, and they were, being sportsmen and athletes, and it felt pretty good there for a few days. But almost immediately thereafter, they went into Ukraine. And, that is very troubling, because you knew that they were planning the Ukraine even during the Olympics. So, Russia ain't what it used to be. We used to think of Russia as somebody who was coming our way, somebody who would build, a global better life with us after, the Soviet Union failed. But no, not true. And Mr. Putin is going back to the Dark Ages. He's going back to the Cold War, and that's what it tells me. And the Sochi Olympics really was a facade for what was happening in Ukraine.
I wonder how many people realize that and understand that even though the Sochi Olympics came off a lot better than we Americans thought, because there are so many threats, and they even had civil disobedience in Sochi. We're not a country to throw stones, because we have our own civil disobedience in Ferguson. We're going to talk about that later on. But the issue becomes that Russia, in that month in February, really became the primary source of news for the world, because of what happened in the Ukraine. To me, that was the biggest issue of that month.
Very sad. And their attempt to deceive the world on what they were really doing, trying to usurp Ukraine again, with all the machinations and the deceptions day to day in the press, was really too bad. And I frankly will not travel to Russia now. I was going to.
Yes,
you've done that recently.
Yeah.
In fact, you had a guest on here last year
from St. Petersburg,
who was encouraging me to go to St. Petersburg. I won't do that now. I really think they got a problem. And the reason I lump in the civil war in Syria, although it's actually more serious in Syria than it is in Ukraine, in my opinion, it's more bloodthirsty somehow, and it's more inhumane, is that we have a global thing going on. I don't think it's just the press telling us about these awful things that are happening. There really are awful things happening. And what's happening in Syria is really inhumane. And again, as ISIS in January, it's part of the same, devolution that George Bush II created when he went into Iraq. It's the whole deterioration of the Middle East.
I think you're right. And
You agree with me?
On this instance, I do. But we're coming to a March, and I'm not sure we will agree on March. March, Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 disappeared. Nobody to this day knows what's going on. In March, Crimea, 96.7% voted in favor of leaving Ukraine and being annexed by Russia. The CDC issued its initial announcement on the Ebola outbreak in March. Those are the three March issues. Which one do you think was the top? And it doesn't have to be one.
I think Ebola is the one that strikes me.
Ah, God, we agree again. That's not good.
I mean, Ebola is more than people think it is. In fact, I've concluded that the powers that be would like to avoid exciting the public about this, like to avoid a global panic. But this is the first time, even SARS, which is what, 10 or 15 years ago, didn't get this far, didn't have this many cases, didn't have a global threat attached to it the way that Ebola does.
I think what the Ebola did for people is they finally realized that Africa as a continent is very different from the Western world. And people always look at Africa and they may think safaris and they may think of desert and different things that they see in their minds. But Africa is a country with hundreds of millions of people. And thousands died in a matter of 2 months because Africa was not ready. The West has not helped Africa in one iota compared to what they've done in other countries, in other areas of the world. Africa is left on its own. The only people who are really moving into Africa, and it's all because of business right now, are the Chinese. They're the ones who are coming into Africa. Ebola, to me, opened up the world's eyes. They finally realized that, my God, millions of people are going to be killed here. And it's because they weren't ready and we did nothing to help them. That's my feeling about the Ebola crisis.
Well, it raises an issue about Hawaii. We've had a number of shows, and the medical school had a show which we're going to put in our OC16 offerings next week about Ebola. And the question, whatever they say about the technology and the medicine and whatever's happening elsewhere, the question is whether Hawaii is ready for it. Years ago, we were going to have a tropical infectious disease facility at the medical school. It didn't happen, honestly. And the guy who was going to build it, Dwayne Gubler, he wound up being disaffected and left for Singapore, where he built it there. Mm-hmm. And it's brilliant. It's there in the auspices of Duke University in Singapore. But we have not paid attention to infectious diseases.
Correct.
We don't have the technology. We don't have the systems. And I frankly am very worried because we are a crossroads. Maybe we could be more of a crossroads if we were a little smarter, but we are nevertheless a crossroads, and infectious diseases will find their way here, and we will have them here. And if there is a global epidemic, we will have part of it, and we're not ready, in my view.
I think Sarah Park has done a wonderful job.
She has.
And in my opinion, what I've seen, her ability to communicate with Atlanta and be sure that the infectious diseases that could come, we are prepared for as best as we can.
As best as we can.
But we're not prepared to the point where if there was an outbreak of something major here in Hawaii, we would be in a desperate situation.
We should have a regional biosafety lab. We had plans for that. We had $50 million set aside for that under Dwayne Gubler. Right. And the university put a stop to it, and it never got built. There was activist objection. Nobody wanted to have infectious diseases among us, so we have no technology here. And it's really tragic.
I agree. Jay, we have to take a break. We're going to start on April, but I'm not going to let you see what we're going to talk about, so it's totally impromptu. I say welcome to Seymour's World. If you've just joined us, we have Jay Fidell as my guest. We're doing a review of 2014 month by month. And so far we've done January, February, and March. We'll hit the spring and the summer after our break.
ThinkTech Hawaii, Hawaii's only live television channel dedicated to featuring local ideas and innovations in technology, clean energy, and global awareness. In celebration of our 15th anniversary, ThinkTech Hawaii invites you to ThinkTech United, a special holiday celebration at the downtown Laniakea YWCA. Join us on December 11th for speakers, poo-poos, awards, prizes, and surprises. And don't miss our featured speaker presentation on leadership by Robbie Alm. If you would like to network, celebrate, and have pauhana with ThinkTech Hawaii, RSVP online at thinktechhawaii.com and reserve your spot today. Mahalo for being a part of our growing audience. Let's keep ThinkTech Hawaii's mission shining bright. See you Thursday.
Hi, welcome back to Seymour's World. I'm Seymour Kazimirski. Our guest today is Jay Fidell, a Mr. Know-It-All, and I mean that, Jay. I find that Jay is...
Now we're name calling. Okay, this changes the tenor of the show.
Jay and I have been working together for a year, and he has really been my mentor when it comes to developing Seymour's World. And today, luckily and thanks to Jay, I have literally thousands of you people following my show, and I love it. I think it's absolutely fabulous. We're doing our annual review, and Jay, we're at April. Are you ready for the topics
Ready for April?
April. NATO announced that it is suspending all military cooperation with Russia, meaning the Russia sanctions. Second, Boko Haram, you remember them? The militants kidnapped 270 teenage girls. Number three, the NBA bans Los Angeles Clippers owner Donald Sterling for life because of racist remarks. Well,
That's it?
that's it, those three.
Sorry, I'm not sure you're going to agree with me, but I think the NATO issue is an outgrowth of the Ukraine, of course, and the gas issue over there. This has a huge economic effect, not only on Russia, but on Europe in general. And Boko Haram is somehow associated with that. It's the idea of doing things that you feel, as a country, are in your own interest and not caring much about the common good, not caring about the other guy. And I think we are in a period of human history, global history, where we go there. These guys who, they kidnap the girls, it's unforgivable. On the other hand, those girls have not been returned. April till December, God, it's a long time. And what kind of effective, experience has the government got there that they haven't been able to solve this? This is really a bad time. It's the best of times in some ways, but these are examples of the worst of times. The NATO thing, it opens the question of whether economic sanctions work. And the answer, I think, which we have seen even in the four corners of this year is, yes, they do. Russia is having a big problem now. Russia's economy is in the tank.
Oh, the devaluating ruble, absolutely.
I don't think it's just the sanctions by themselves, although that is kind of a we mean it statement about how the West feels over what Russia has done. But it's the fact that Russia has made itself an outcast, and people aren't likely to do business with Russia.
Here's my feeling, Jay. On the Russia issue, it's bigger than that. People are starting to realize that we can't expect immediate results. The sanctions are just starting to work in the last couple of months. We're starting to see Putin backing down from Ukraine. He's trying to make nice with the European Union. He is starting to see that he can't bully anymore, that we are staying the course and doing what we have to do to make sure that he understands that if he continues trying to overpower little bordering nations that he has, that we're going to stand by those people.
I hope you're right, Seymour.
Well, I hope I am too.
But let me offer another point, though. We tried sanctions on Iran. They were very strong-willed about it. They didn't care. You can say it affected their economy. I don't think they cared, and I don't think they care today. As a matter of fact, who's the guy that backed down in the discussions with Iran? It wasn't Iran, it was us. And it was because of, you know, other issues
But
happening.
you see, that's the difference. With what we have done now with Russia, with getting a lot of the Western world to say we are going to abide by these sanctions, he's starting to realize that he can't bully us anymore. And not that he is such a big guy, you know, but he is playing the role of a big guy. Regarding the Boko Haram,
He overplayed his hand.
yes, he did.
And this is
I
a
agree.
good thing.
I agree.
I mean, that we found out.
Yes, absolutely. Boko Haram, what that did, that unified the world. That helped everybody be on the same path. Every country in the world was able to say, this is horrible, this is terrible. And even though it was a disaster and it has not been fixed yet, the world started to find some glue to hold it together. That's what I think Boko Haram did. As horrible as it was in the end, it will be a unifying force for people if there is more kidnapping, if there is other issues where the world finds a reason to stand up and unify itself together to make it one world.
You know, within the same context of 2014, there were bus rapes in India.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time it happened, the world was shaken that this could happen in an emerging economy, an emerging country. It happened again recently, and you could see that India was not going to tolerate it. There was evidence that they were tolerating it before, and because of world, publicity and opinion, they're not likely to tolerate it so much now. I think there'll be real recriminations on that issue. So it's the same thing, maybe. I think that's what you're saying in the kidnapping, is that this kind of thing was happening anyway. This was a huge example of it. The world became aware, so there's backlash on this kind of thing. But I would offer this. Those girls are still there. And this is the common denominator for me, is the Ebola thing. If the world really cared about Africa, those girls would be free today.
Correct.
So they may be outraged, but there is not action, and they're still in captivity.
Okay, I agree. Now, I'm a little disappointed you didn't comment on Donald Sterling and the NBA. That has changed.
Sorry.
That to me was the beginning of racial equity in sports, because we've always had a lot of white owners owning a lot of teams that have a lot of African American players. But in my opinion, what they did to Donald Sterling is a gavel. And that gavel is saying, you have to treat your players right, and you cannot be a racist in today's world of professional sports. Don't forget, professional sports involves millions of people, and it goes right down to the amateur level, which means if you have a coach at high school level, whether it's in gymnastics or whether it's football, it doesn't matter what, and they're a racist, they will know, based on what happened to Donald Sterling, that it will not be tolerated. And of course, this is more recent with the football players that have come about. We'll talk about that in a minute.
My reaction, I don't think we agree on that. I mean, you can't be a racist today. You'll get in trouble.
He did.
He did. He sure did. And it'll happen again and again. But what bothers me is that the press makes raw meat out of this, and then it's a big headline about the NBA. I mean, there are more important fish to fry. There are more important fish in Washington and around the world than what happens inside a sports organization.
Jay, you're wrong.
And let me add that Bill Cosby
one step
is getting excoriated now for people who claim that he raped them years and years ago. I don't think that's racial, but it's rape. It's another one of those highly charged situations, and the press is taking him apart. So I turn on CNN. Remember how we used to respect CNN? Mm-hmm. And they're doing a half an hour on Bill Cosby. I don't care. I mean, that's nice. Rape is bad. We got statutes that say rape is bad. We got statutes that say racial discrimination is bad. But can't they give us some better news? And that's what ThinkTech is about. Let's find real news. Let's not do raw meat news. And the networks love that,
because
even
that's
including
what sells.
CNN.
Of course, that's what sells. All right, let's get into May. You ready? Voters in the eastern Ukrainian area of Donetsk vote in favor of independence from Ukraine. Same-sex marriage becomes legal in Oregon. President Barack Obama announces 9,800 troops will remain in Afghanistan after the withdrawal of most troops at the end of 2014. Go ahead. You got 3 topics.
Well, Ukraine continues through the year and until today. I mean, Ukraine is a...
But this was a very important vote. Jay. If
but-
voters decided to be independent from Ukraine, whether it was legal or not, whether you don't like it or not, voters did decide. And if we're going to say that we respect democratic values, then we have to respect what those voters did.
I'm not sure I believe it.
Okay.
That would be my point, my take on that item on your list. I think that the way the press works, the way the government works, the way the voting system in general works, in this country, the way Citizens United works and the super PACs and all that money going into trying to affect public opinion, I'm not sure I trust a vote. I don't trust that vote. You can say that it's a profound statement, but only if you make the assumption that the vote was an accurate statement of public opinion.
We're going into June. Ready?
And this suggests.
Oh, you're not finished, are you?
This suggests that
Yeah.
we will have, in this world, not in this country only, we will have a new democracy going forward. It will be direct democracy. It will be on the web. It will not be by conventional voting procedures, and it'll be sort of a web direct vote.
The
This will
problem,
happen.
Jay, in the United States, the problem
This
will
does
be
not solve the problem.
that the super PACs, right?
Of
the money that
manipulating
buys.
public opinion.
Right, exactly.
But I think the whole voting procedure, people really do not have confidence in it anymore.
Agreed. We've only gone through half the year, and we've gone through 3/4 of our show. Are you ready? June. El
Haven't finished
Sisi
for
wins.
May, but it's okay.
El Sisi wins the election in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
3 Israeli teens on their way home from school in the West Bank are abducted, and at the beginning of the Israeli war. The World Cup takes place in Brazil. Germany is the winner.
The one that touches me is the West Bank. Not because it was only 3 lives, but because it was 3 lives, innocent young kids who, might be your neighbor in Main Street, USA.
What did the war solve, Jay? What did the Israeli
The Gaza war?
Strip? Yeah. What did it solve?
Nothing.
Nothing. That's the problem.
History is punctuated with Gaza wars. Last time they had a Gaza war, one iteration ago, we did a number of shows about it, and we asked the same question, what did it solve? Not a whole lot, but that's the way it works in the Middle East. And you have to look at it very philosophically and see it not necessarily as a war, but as a point of demarcation in a historical trend. You have to look at the whole trend. You have to look at where it's really going. But anyway, I think the West Bank thing is a reflection, if not a cause, of what we have now, with an enormous number of Jews being killed on a monthly basis in intra-country terrorism in Israel. This is something that's different. It's people mano a mano killing other people on the street, even people they live with and deal with, work in the same neighborhoods, and they're killing each other on the street because of this level of hatred that seems to be coming out of the Arab quarter. I don't know what to say about it, but I think that the murder of these 3 kids and those people in Jerusalem just a few weeks ago, directly related, we're regrettably going to see more of it, and it is awful.
I also regret what happened in Gaza. I regret that 2,000 people were killed in Gaza. That was a terrible thing that happened to them. But somehow the lesson has to be learned. And I remember my mother, when she used to spank me, she was going to say, she always said to me, "Did you learn a lesson?" And that is so important. When are people going to learn from their actions are going to inspire the other side to a reaction? And if the Gaza people don't understand that yet, when are they going to learn? We have to take a break, and then I'll let you come back and answer that. I promise you. I promise. This is, I'm Seymour Kazimirski on Seymour's World at ThinkTech Hawaii. We'll be back in a minute.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia. And by Asia, we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world. and we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Hi, welcome back to Seymour's World. I'm Seymour Kazimirski. We are doing an annual review with Jay Fidell, my mentor on this show, and I think a man of considerable opinion. Unfortunately, I don't agree with a lot of his opinions, but that's why we are good friends. So Jay, one quick comment on my last comment, which was, are the Gaza people going to learn that if they continue to do what they're doing, there will always be a reaction from Israel?
The biggest problem in the world today is amnesia. Can't remember what happened. And you know what's it George Santayana said, if you can't remember, you'll do it again. You'll relive the past. But I'd like to add this thought, is that the Israelis, they're like the guy next door on Main Street. They're ordinary people. They're not necessarily angry. They're certainly not murderers, as some people would like to cast them. If they had a choice of not moving into Gaza, they would certainly not move into Gaza. If they had a choice of avoiding violence, they would certainly avoid violence. And I think part of the reason why the government of Israel, which is not everybody, you know, they have lots of difference of opinion like you and me.
Sure.
That's why the government of Israel feels it must go into Gaza in order to make it clear that there's a reaction to every action. If they felt that was not necessary, they wouldn't go in.
I agree. Let's go on because our time is short. July. In August, we're talking about two US F-18 jet fighter bomb the ISIS extremists in Iraq. The first time that there was joint ISIS attacks was in August. In August also, African-American teen Michael Brown, 18 years old, was shot and killed by a white police officer in Ferguson. Those are the only two that I felt really were so strong, in my opinion, in August. Tell me your thoughts.
Well, let me discard the thing about the shooting and the jets in
Okay.
And ISIS. I don't think it means that much because it hasn't meant that much. It hasn't had any significant effect. You
don't feel that ISIS has been cut back a little bit from being the aggressor?
Back a little bit, but they're not stopped. They're still there. You can still see all those red splotches on the map about the territories they control. I think
But Jay,
still...
the one thing you have to understand, when they bomb, we are truly trying to do, similar to what Israel tried to do, is to not bomb the civilian areas. The ISIS people are living in homes, or they're hiding in homes of the local population. Therefore, we can't do the carpet bombing that would eliminate them all. So it's going to take a little more time,
It's going
in
to
my
take boots
opinion.
on the ground.
Yeah,
That's going to,
but not ours.
Well, we'll see. I mean, Obama said he's not going to do that, but he's changed his mind on a bunch of things.
Yes, he
So
has.
he may change his mind on boots to the ground.
What about Ferguson?
Yeah, Ferguson's more important. Ferguson's a
Right.
statement of the state of the United States, the condition of the United States. We have a racial war going on in the hinterland here. I don't think we were aware of it until Ferguson happened. And I think the press is part of it. The press fulminated that write-up and created a lot of the consternation on both sides. But the end of the story is we have a lot of people disagreeing on racial terms, and it's going to happen again. And I don't think what Obama did was smart. When he got Eric Holder to come there,
Yep.
and not on one occasion, but on two occasions to initiate federal Department of Justice investigations, that just spun it up some more. The idea is to encourage the process, let the process happen the way it will in a state jurisdiction, and if that's wrong, then you take it.
You have
take it
to
up in
change the
court.
process if you
you
have
can't
to.
have parallel processes. You
No.
know, it's a cluster. What's going on? Everybody's in on it, and so what we have to do is cool it a little bit and let our existing law system handle it. And if that's wrong, then we'll appeal it or we'll rewrite the law. But to have everybody jump in all at the same time is really not healthy for the country.
Agreed. We're going into September now. In September, a coalition of military forces from the U.S. decided that they were going to join forces with the U.S. and do something. In late September, there was a protest in Hong Kong that started, the pro-democracy protest. Which one is your number one talking point?
Well, Hong Kong is interesting. We've had a number of shows about. This is really, a statement of what ThinkTech has covered over the year. I'm so happy to hear you pick these topics because they are a statement of what we do. Hong Kong was very interesting, and Hong Kong was, a statement of where modern China is, the evolution of its relationship with Hong Kong, which everybody has worried about since the late 90s. And, the mask is off, and we are now seeing, Beijing's attempts to make Hong Kong part of China. No surprise there. I don't think the protesters succeeded in this. I thought it was an interesting statement to the world. I thought the press coverage, both inside and outside of Hong Kong, was educational. At the end of the day, Beijing has the power to stop these guys from doing anything much, and essentially they have. But it will happen again.
I agree with you 100%. I think that the statement was the important part. They couldn't win, obviously, but I was very pleasantly surprised that Beijing, because of all the media, really didn't go in there with force, and they allowed this thing to happen and basically bleed away until the bleeding stopped, and now it's basically over. And that, to me, was a lot better than Ferguson or some of the other riots we're seeing in the world. For other reasons, obviously.
Interesting comparison. Beijing did not want a conflagration on its hands, and it took steps. It took steps to, to contain the situation.
Correct.
In the United States, everybody wanted a conflagration on their hands. It seemed like everybody wanted to spin it up, and they did.
Oh, yes.
And that was bad for everyone.
Correct. We're going to lump October and November together. October 21st, Olympic sprinter Oscar Pistorius was convicted. November 4th, the Republican Party wins a majority. November 12th, the European Space Agency lands the probe on Mars. So you've got Pistorius, you've got the Republican Party, and you've got the probe on Mars.
I think the Republican Party is the
Me
one
too.
that touches me, and we're in for it. and I can go either way on in politics, but we're in for it now. I think we'll see more dastardly things happen. Although I think the Republican Party has actually gone a little more moderate since
I think
the
they've
days
come
of
to the
Tea
middle,
Party and all
actually.
that,
Right, yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have won.
Right.
But I would rather have seen the Democrats stay in power. But I guess that represents the country. That's the way it is.
We had the same talk about Hawaii politics. You remember when Ige won, and I said I would rather that Abercrombie had actually stayed in power. You disagreed with me, but
I was right.
Of course, you were right.
Yeah.
But my feeling was that the Republican Party won for the reason that the Democratic Party didn't do a good job. It wasn't that the Republicans did a great job of convincing the people to vote for them. It's the Democrats that did not do a good job of really promoting what their agenda was. And I think the lesson to be learned from all of this is if you don't have a clear agenda, you're going to lose. You have to have a clear agenda.
Right. And the other part of it is, the email campaigns and all that, the social media campaigns had a role in that. Because it magnifies the failure of the Democrats to have a clear message. Oh, they were sending out tons of stuff, and it all demonstrated they didn't have a clear message.
Amazing.
It was being leveraged against them.
Yeah. I have to say that I really enjoyed watching the probe land on Mars. I thought that just gave me a feeling, good news rather than bad. And I know some people say, what a waste of money. What are we doing with that? We should be feeding people. I agree with all that stuff. But at the same time, it gives you a moment to laugh. It gives you a moment to say, wow, we just landed on Mars. I mean, you remember when we landed on the moon, how we were all glued to our televisions? We just landed on Mars. So I like that.
It's kind of a version of Shakespeare's comic relief.
Yeah, maybe you're right. December, the last month before we do our closing.
It's not finished yet.
No, but it's hard because we're so short. It's only the 8th or the 9th of December. We have to talk about the grand jury that did not indict the white officer in New York. That's the only piece that I have because that has spurred riots all over the United States. So that, of course, followed Ferguson. But I want to know from you what your thought is on this. Are we, in my opinion, the grand jury process, and you said it before, maybe we have to revamp some of the laws as to how we follow, and you're an attorney, how we follow the law. But I don't like the idea that there is a question mark about whether the grand jury did a good job or not because of the inability to have the defense and the prosecutor both question who is coming to the grand jury.
Well, You know, I mean, I think it's good to have grand juries in general. And if you're a defendant, you know,
You want a grand
you
jury.
want protections like that. You don't want it to rush to a prosecution and a court trial and all, or judgment. So I think the system in general is well taken, and I don't think there's a call for sweeping change here. I think the public ought to be better informed about how this system works. I don't think they're well informed about it, even in New York, where presumably they know a lot about law. It's a very, law-oriented community in Manhattan. But I think it's troublesome that both of these grand juries one followed the other, and the public was watching it. The press was, again, spinning it up. So I think it's kind of the way we look at it more than what actually happened. There are mistakes made all the time. There are many prosecutions that don't get made, and there are many people who get off. And
Who should be
prosecuted.
Right.
And you have to evaluate the system taking that into account. It's not perfect, but it's the best one we have. And I think this really is a huge threat to the system, where people will throw it all out and say it's all wrong, it's all bad. There's some bad karma, bad tone, bad attitude in all of American law. Oh, that's a little heavy. Riots in the street over it, it troubles me. If it's wrong, then the authorities should take it up, or the legislature should change it. But I don't think we need riots in the street if it can be shown there was no corruption going on within that body. I think it's sad that we've reached this point. It is the same thing as the reaction to the killing in Ferguson in the first place. And the country is in a state over this, and the press is enhancing that.
You seem to blame the press a lot.
I do.
And so do I, by the way. But the press has a job to do, and their job is to report whatever they see as fact rather than fiction. And I thought that the reporting in Ferguson and the reporting in New York, based on what we saw, was pretty factual. The problem, of course, is that the witnesses had not been examined prior to their discussion with the press. Therefore, all we were seeing were witnesses saying that this kid had his hands up, and we really didn't get the full story. I'd like to see a little bit more curtailing of the press. I think the press somehow should not be allowed to just walk into a situation and immediately interview witnesses who may not be corroborated by facts. That bothers me a little bit. How do we do that?
I don't know. You're talking about the First Amendment here.
Yes.
And anybody in the press, including, I suppose, ThinkTech, would not want to be curtailed. I think it's a self-restraint, such as we saw in the Second World War, where the press, of its own motion, decided it wasn't going to repeat information it felt was classified or against the national war effort. That's the last time we saw that. But I think now the press ought to have a certain amount of self-restraint. They could blow this up, but maybe they have a certain sense of the common good, so they don't necessarily blow it up. I think what you have is the press being run by powers that like the numbers, that want to have raw meat, that want to sell, airspace, and want to sell ads and want to sell newspapers, and they know that people want it. I mean, if you talk to any news channel, probably in the country, they're going to tell you it's car accidents, it's crime, it's weather, and it's sports. And who cares about the rest of it? So what we have is people finish school whenever they do, and all the education they get after that is at 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock.
You know what Sue and I do, Jay? We watch the last 5 minutes of the Channel 7 news because it's a feel-good story. That's the only thing.
I would expect nothing less.
That's the only thing we watch, because everything else is all sensationalism. There was a movie about that, a matter of fact, where this guy was trying to be a crime reporter, a TV crime reporter, and he was told, you've got to get to the accident first. You've got to bring us all the red blood, bring us the close-knit. I mean, this is what it's all about.
You can make red blood. In every news story, in the head of every reporter and journalist is a message. He may not even realize it, but you always turn your story one way or the other, whether you realize it or not, because you have your own bias about things, and you have your own need to, make a point. And the problem is that when they covered all that red blood, they were trying to excite the public.
I think you're right.
And they were making their own grand jury. And this is, inconsistent with our system.
Jay, we have had a wonderful hour together. I want to apologize to our audience if this was all negative news. It wasn't. A lot of it is, it's very important for all of us to look back over this year and say, it was a great year. We had a wonderful year. We're healthy. We're in school. We're working. Our jobs are there for us. We're breathing cleaner air than we've done before.
And we haven't blown each other up. And the world is still, relatively together.
It really
so
is.
So be thankful, like Thanksgiving.
That's exactly right. So for all of us, I want to say thank you to you for watching for this last year. As I mentioned up front, this is my anniversary of starting with ThinkTech Hawaii. We will be here next week, and next week we have a special little celebration. We're going to celebrate not just Christmas, because we know we're in the midst of our holidays. We are going to celebrate the first day of Hanukkah. Hanukkah is next Tuesday, our first day, and we will be doing it on air here at Seymour's World. Be well and have a wonderful week. Aloha.